Welcome to the webinar. This is Templates, Tools, and Techs. I'm James Pittman, co-founder here at DocketWise. I have with me my guest, Jared Jaskot, immigration lawyer in private practice and kind of tech guru, social media tech guru, who is going to help us to explain to you how to raise your tech IQ. In other words, we're going to be talking about how you should think about outfitting your practice with technology as an immigration lawyer, how to determine what you need, how to evaluate these products, what to look for, how much technology is enough, what criteria you should employ, where to go to find out more, and how to think about this. So Jared, do you want to just give us an introduction? Tell us a little bit about yourself.
Yeah, totally. Well, first of all, thanks for inviting me, James. I really appreciate it. I am a DocketWise customer in my law firm, so I love your product. I've been a customer for a long time. I'm an immigration attorney in Baltimore, Maryland. I have a practice that does mostly, we serve Central American immigrants. Number one case type is special immigrant juvenile status, and do a lot of U visa, asylum, and family cases. I also have a tech startup that I've created called YoTengoBot. That's all about helping immigration attorneys serve larger numbers of people, grow their law firm using AI. And I'm also a really big geek. I love tech. James and I were kind of talking about different things that we could do. And I shared with him that I actually kind of sometimes pick tools that are harder to use because I like that sort of difficulty. So yeah, I love tech, and I'm super excited to talk about this today.
Awesome. That is so awesome. All right, so let's talk about how to think about, outfitting your practice with technology, the right mindset that you want to employ to approach this task. I mean, whether you're, just out of law school or whether you've been around for many years, I mean, it doesn't matter. I mean, if you're a person just starting out, your legal training may not have equipped you to think about the technology. You may have had limited exposures to these practice management technologies. Or if you've been out for a really long time, maybe you were trained and went through all your training before a lot of these tools came out or when they were first coming out. I mean, people may not be familiar with the latest apps that are out there. So we want to talk about, what do you need? So Jared, what's your opinion about how people should think about what technology they need for their practice? I mean, how much is enough, and what are the main areas they should cover?
Yeah, I mean, I think that as attorneys, the one thing that we really don't have all we want of is time. That's the big thing that I'm constantly thinking about, whether it's the attorneys in my firm or frankly, even the paralegals and the other staff. Time is a very limited resource. Of course, you can work more, but who really wants to work more? And you could charge more, but that's, often leads to a tail off in clients. So what I'm always thinking about is, where are we spending our time and what parts of that can be automated? And so when you're thinking about where am I spending my time and what parts of that can be automated, probably the first thing that you need to figure out is something that's tracking actually what are you doing with your time and in your cases, and frankly, how is that being recorded, and how much money is being spent on that? I started my law firm 2014. First thing that we got was Clio. And when we really started, plugging it in, we started to see, wow, there's this couple case types over here that we're spending so much time and energy on. We're not making any money from these cases. And so that's just kind of engaging in that exercise over and over is really my baseline.
Mm-hmm. So, I mean, certainly you want to think about, does the product that you're thinking about using really reduce the number of manual hours that's required for the work? I mean, you want to pick up efficiencies wherever you can. I mean, that is why we use forms technology and why we use workflow technology. And you also want to think about, is the company that you're thinking about, whose product you're thinking about subscribing to, is it responsive to user feedback? I always think that you also want to think about how user-friendly it is. I mean, you want to think not only about yourself as the partner in the firm or the owner of the firm, but you want to think about your staff. Are they going to be able to get up to speed on it? Is it user-friendly in a way that they're going to get in and start producing work, and not, you're not going to get into a situation where you're spending too much time, trying to have them taught how to use it or teaching them or correcting their usage of it, but you want them actually producing work. Jared, you had told me before that the use of an API or having the option of utilizing an API is a very important factor for you when you're evaluating office technology. Would you tell me why about that?
Before we go to the API, I want to just say something about what you just said about the user friendliness, because, I mean, one of the things I love about DocketWise, and I think everyone should think about, is there's sort of two users in a lot of these things. There's your law firm, your employees, but there's also your customers. And the beauty, the user interface of that tech that you're using with your customers reflects upon you. So, when I have a customer sign up and we immediately send them the whole questionnaire from DocketWise and it looks amazing, then that's like a really, that really reflects highly upon the firm. And I think showing throughout to your customers that you have a great user experience and modeling that before they decide to hire you and after is a really critical piece. And so, those sort of little things people definitely pick up on. So that's really what I would say about user friendliness. As far as the API, for people that don't really even know what API is, right? Maybe we start there. It's sort of like, how does software talk with each other? And the more that the programs that you use have excellent, well-documented APIs, the more you can avoid double entry of data, the more that you can have the software talk to each other and actually do more things. Really, the API is sort of the key to everything. Now, in our field, James, there's actually there's a big lack of APIs in both practice management and forms management. There's very few companies that are really doing a good job there. So I think, but that is something that really shows me as an immigration attorney that if a company has an API or they have one in their plans, that there's someone that's planning on playing well with others.
And Jared, how do they use an API? I mean, what actually did they do to utilize an API? Just give us a couple of use cases.
Right. So I mean, the first reason I bought DocketWise, right, is that you guys designed yourselves to plug into Clio. Right. So for me, it was like, okay, which of the immigration forms play well with Clio? There's only a couple options. And so, that was the first thing. And what does that API do in real life is when I created a new client in Clio, they were automatically created as a new contact and a new matter in DocketWise. We don't have to go over here and do that again. And so little things like that really add up to making your law firm faster and faster.
Yeah, these are the integrations that we're talking about. So if you're not familiar with the term API, I mean, you can think about integrations. And DocketWise has a lot of integrations. Where the whole trend in the industry is to try to get as much integration as you can from one end to the other. So from the client's initial contact with your firm, through the intake, through the appointment scheduling, into the opening the case management, creating the forms, writing an invoice, and all the way through until you close the file and send them, a file closing letter. And you want the products that you're using to, as much as possible, talk to each other and make that transition smooth, so that you're not having multiple things in multiple places and having to do a lot of repeated data entry. This is what we're saying. So let's talk a little bit about thinking about creating a budget for technology. Let's just do a little aside on the budget. I mean, sometimes people get hung up on the cost of these things, and I think it's a false economy, because you have to think about how much time and work are you actually saving? What's the efficiency you're going to get out of this? So you shouldn't, so what do you think about that, Jared? I mean, how should people think about creating a budget for technology?
Yeah, I mean, I'm maybe a little bit of an outsider opinion here, James, but I think that a lot of immigration attorneys I talk to, their thoughts about price sensitivity, they're just really missing the mark. You're not going to make more money in your law firm by picking something that's $80 a month versus $90 a month. You're going to make more money by picking the best one. And so what I try to think about is, which is the one that's going to save me and my staff the most time? Because frankly, if a piece of software saves my staff 2 hours a month, it's worth it. There's like almost this, but as attorneys, we make so much per hour that there's almost never a time that buying software to do it isn't the right decision.
I mean, we talk in this industry from our side as the tech company, we talk about pain points, and we try to solve the customer's pain points. Jared, I mean, what are some of the main pain points that you think are involved in immigration law? The obvious one being populating the forms, but what are some of the other ones?
Yeah, I mean, a lot of attorneys are kind of like hard to get a hold of, and they're just like, I mean, where I, you're James, kind of like in docket wise, this is kind of like this person is now a client. We're trying to do the work for them as fast as possible with as little work on the firm side as possible, so we can push up the profit margin. Where my chatbots play is in the customer sees an ad, sees a piece of content that you've created, hears about you, and then they reach out to your firm. Modern marketing studies show that if you're not back to them within 5 minutes, they're going on to the next person. And so, I think a big pain point that we see is firms that just take a long time to get back to people. Attorneys, a lot of times, are kind of like bankers in their availability 9 to 5, but a lot of our clients are working in those hours as well. So I think client communication, how quickly can we get back to them? And how much of that communication can we automate? Which, because most immigration cases, whatever that case that you have is, there's only a finite number of questions that are problems that every customer has. They keep repeating over and over again. So if you can automate all that content and really answer your customers' questions instantly for them, they're happier. And if you can automate that, you're happier because you're not having to answer the same question over and over again.
Well, I think it's a good time to probably bring in YoTengoBot and kind of ask you to sort of give us a couple of use cases for how YoTengoBot works, because that's really this is really you're getting to what you sought to achieve with YoTengoBot. This is the issue that you sought to solve, right?
Exactly. That's exactly right. I mean, the prepaid consult is sort of the gold standard. That's kind of the first moment that most immigration attorneys are looking to go from someone who's showing interest to someone that becomes your client. And I'm for it. I use prepaid consults in my law firm. I'm sure that you did as well, James, when you had a law firm. And I think most high quality immigration attorneys do a prepaid consult. Well, if we take a step back from the why we love the prepaid consult and we put ourselves in the client's shoes, it's really a tremendous risk, right? You want to know that you're going to get some value out of that consult in terms of, can you be helped? But also in terms of, this person that I'm about to pay this money to actually knows what the heck they're talking about. And to get them over that hump, what we need to do is talk to them. Now, a lot of attorneys that I talk to, customer calls and says, hey, I just got a couple questions. And the attorney's like, no, I'm not going to talk to you until you pay my consult fee. And then we just have these two sides. It's kind of like in the middle school dance when there's two people on the other side of the room. They both want to dance with each other, but they're both too scared to ask. How do we bridge that gap? And so what we do at YoTengo is we have an AI that actually talks to customers about their cases, serves them content from the attorney that they've created, and helping them get the confidence that they're going to get value from the consultation, that the attorney on the other end knows what they're doing, they're going to be able to help them, they speak their language. What that does is it really increases the number of customers that touch you. From that moment to becoming someone that pays you for a consult, we can dramatically increase that by providing them a ton of free value before that consult decision.
Mm-hmm. That is, fantastic. I mean, you have to think about from the client's point of view. I mean, people tend to reach out, right when they're at the point that they want to do something about their case, and you have to strike while the iron's hot, and you have to communicate to them, from the first communication that you are authoritative on the issue that they're bringing up, and at the same time, as you said, with immigration, it's just in the nature of how the field is that a lot of times you have to expend a significant amount of time to really analyze their case history. It's an administrative area. These cases come with a history. You may have to FOIA the file, or at least read the file if they have the file, until you really know what you can do for the client. So you're going to have to charge for that time generally. And, it's fine to give people 5-10 minutes, free. That's perfectly fine. But if it's an hour, 2 hours, you have to charge for that time. And you have to convince the client why they should pay for that time. This is what you need to do. And Jared, how old is YoTengoBot? When did you start it?
Yeah, so I mean, I came out with actually a version of it that was called YoTengoBot, and what it did was it actually qualified people for things, and then I was trying to sell attorneys leads. this is a pre-qualified customer. Really went out into the market with that. The attorneys weren't that into it. I didn't like selling leads to them either. So what we did is we pivoted, the classic startup pivot, and we became white label. So we started selling our technology to attorneys, and it speaks to customers on their behalf. And really our, the current machine learning driven model that we have launched in April of last year.
Fascinating. It's doing well.
Yeah, it's doing really well. We've had around 200,000 conversations with customers since it's launched.
Amazing.
Which is a lot. And
it's a lot of chatting.
Yeah, it's a lot of chat. People like it. I think there's a couple of little key things that are going on here. Number one is people are reaching out to law firms on a whole lot more channels than the traditional channels. So people love texting. Most people under the age of 35 prefer texting to the phone. And so that's really where our tech comes in. People can message their law firm on Facebook Messenger, on WhatsApp, on SMS, on their website, and actually in Google Maps. And so really my philosophy with law firms is that we need to meet their clients where they are at. And so if that client wants to chat with you on WhatsApp, why not give them that option? So
absolutely.
Multi-channel, and these are the things that I think about a lot, is the idea that maybe, the web as we know it today could potentially not be really the place where clients meet you anymore in the future. And so understanding how to connect with your clients on all these other channels is a really powerful technique for firms to grow.
Absolutely. That couldn't be truer. And I totally agree with it. I want to talk a little bit. I mean, this is a great starting point to talk a little bit about a CRM, customer relationship management tools, which is a more general topic. I mean, for those just hearing the term for the first time, I mean, let's just say what we're talking about here. Customer relationship management, or CRM, as we say, that's basically a process in which, any organization or business, administers, controls, modulates its interaction with its customers, and typically you're going to be using data analysis to some extent. You're going to be using analytics to study, the information that you're gaining through your interactions with your customers. And, there's a couple of different aspects of it that problems that you might try to solve with your CRM. It can involve, any of the following. I mean, you might have sales automation, where you have automated features that are doing things at each stage in the sales cycle, whether it's allowing the client to input their contact information to become a sales lead, the follow-up on the lead, trying to get the person in for a consultation, trying to convert them to a client. And then you will be examining your analytics on how effective your conversion rate has been. What percentage of your inbound potential clients did you actually succeed in converting to actual clients, and what obstacles occurred, during your sales process. Your marketing automation is part of your CRM. That's going to focus on, your overall marketing process to make that more efficient. So sometimes CRM tools with, marketing automation capabilities, they can automate certain tasks that have to be repeated. For example, sending out emails such as MailChimp, something like that. They can send out, you can create an email campaign and send those out at certain times to customers. Or, you can use one of those tools that allows you to post your marketing information on social media, something like Hootsuite. That used to be a popular one. I don't know if it's still as popular as it was, but there's others now too, where you have a sort of centralized place where you can make updates to all of your social media channels. And then another aspect of CRM is service automation. This might be a little different. This is, I think, a little bit different for law firms, but a lot of times when people have, in other words, your customer service, how you service your clients and deal with, their issues, their concerns, their questions, any complaints, things like that, whether you're doing that by phone, by email, through, other channels, through social media, through knowledge bases, et cetera. So those are all aspects of how you automate your interaction with your clients. First of all, Jared, do you want to add anything to any of those points I raised?
Yeah, I mean, so for me, what CRM did when I really brought it in my firm, all those great things that James talks about in terms of conversion rate and understanding, But what it also does is it allows you to literally see into the future. So if you know, for instance, that most of your clients take 60 days from the consultation with you to actually signing that retainer, and you know that 25% of the people that you consulted with end up retaining your law firm. So you look in your CRM and you say, okay, 60 days ago, the 90 days prior, those 30 days, I offered clients services at the value of $100,000. Well, you know that because that 25% rate, you're gonna have in the next 30 days, $25,000 worth of new cases signed up. And when you begin to understand these things, sales cycle and conversion rate, and you look into the future, what that allows you to do as an attorney really is staff your law firm with confidence. A lot of people are scared to hire a paralegal, scared to hire an associate attorney because they're not sure if they're going to be able to bring in the business. When you have a CRM and you begin to actually see exactly what's happening in your law firm, you can look into the future and know that you will be able to pay that paralegal. You will be able to pay that person. You can also say, hey, I'm not happy with $25,000 a month. I want $100,000 a month, How am I going to do that? Well, then you look, okay, well, I'm getting clients from referrals, from Google Ads, from Facebook. Which one of those has a better conversion rate? How much does it cost me there? And then now you've got the dials of your law firm in your hand. You can turn that dial up and get more leads in, get more consults. This is how you grow your business. And a CRM is sort of like that set of gauges in your car that tell you your oil pressure, how fast you're going, the amount of gas you have. When you really begin to understand that about your business, in this case, your law firm, having those dials and those gauges, that's how you succeed in business.
It is. If you're not doing the analytics, you're flying blind, right?
Right.
What are you doing? You don't have a plan. But okay, so great points, Jared. Excellent points. Let's talk about appointment scheduling and calendaring. What do you use, Jared?
Well, I use one called AppToto, and the reason for that is that it's really nerdy. It lets me do all these different things, customized SMS, bilingual messages, But I have a ton of customers from my bots that use Acuity and Calendly as well. I think those two are far and away the market leaders. James, I don't really think that the feature set from any of these things are too much different from each other, really, when you get down to it. I think that the key is to have one of them and have them integrated. And depending on who your customers are for your law firm, what kind of customer they are, I mean, how amazing is it to have someone contact you on Facebook, talk to the YoTengoBot, determine that they want to book a consult with you, serve them the Calendly link, you wake up, you come into the office on Monday morning and you have 5 consults booked, you nor your staff did anything. I mean, that is pure magic right there.
It is. It absolutely is. That's the way you want it, frankly. I have a couple of points that I think people should, keep in mind when they're thinking about the calendaring. Just, you need some guiding lights here. I mean, you want something where clients can book an appointment with you 24/7, ideally. I mean, you don't want them getting, at this point in history, you don't really want them getting your voicemail after hours and them having to wait till the next day to book an appointment. That is not ideal. So you want, an online booking system that allows people to schedule appointments at their ease, whether they're thinking about their case at 10:30 at night or whatever it is. You want it to be easy for them to cancel and reschedule. People change their mind, something comes up, they need to reschedule. So you want a tool that allows them to do that. Once they get the initial appointment confirmation, you want to make it easy for them to cancel or reschedule the appointment and get an email confirmation of that rescheduling, and also make the necessary updates in your calendar. You want it to be easy to set up. You want your appointment scheduling system to be easy to set up. You want it to be customizable. Maybe you have several different people in the office, several different attorneys that people can schedule appointments with. You want to be able to have customizable hours during which people can schedule. Maybe attorney number 1 is taking appointments from 9 a.m. until 3 p.m. Attorney number 2 is taking appointments from 12 noon when they get back from court until 6 p.m. You want depending on who they're choosing to schedule the appointment with, you want those things to be customizable in the interface. You want it to be quick for the potential client to book an appointment. You don't want a long drawn out process just for them to have to book an appointment. You want it to be easy, quick for them to pick a time, put in their information and book the appointment. And you want to be able to access your calendaring system from, ideally from anywhere, from any connected device, right? You may want to look at your calendar at any time. You shouldn't have to be, in front of your main computer in your office during regular business hours to see it. You should be able to log in from anywhere. You want to have analytics. You want to be able to evaluate analytics and reports. You want to be able to, track the scheduling, see which services are being requested, which people in the office are being booked the most, among other. There can be, many different, dimensions you want to analyze, but those are some. You also want, you want this process to reduce no-shows and schedule conflicts. So if you make it easy for them to book, if you make it easy for them to reschedule, if you customize it properly, what's that going to do for you? It's going to reduce no-shows. We've all had the experience of people booking an appointment and you're sitting there waiting for them to arrive and it's 10, 15 minutes are going by and you're getting furious because they are not showing up for their appointment. We don't want that to happen, and it'll happen much less if it's easy for people to cancel and reschedule. You also want to avoid schedule conflicts. Somebody called you up on the phone, you told them to come at 11 and you just realized you had a telephonic hearing at 11. Now you have to call them back and reschedule. That's not what you want. So you want also automated reminders via email, via text message to both the client and the lawyer. And that's going to help to increase, the success in your scheduling. You also want a good user experience. You want it to be pleasant. You want it to be convenient for the client to use. And you want to make sure that it syncs with whatever calendars you're using. So when they book the appointment, make sure it's going on whichever office calendar you're using, whether you're using Google, whether you're using Outlook, iCloud, what have you. Make sure that it has the syncing that you need. Jared, any other thoughts on calendaring?
Yeah, I totally agree. I love everything that you said. It's all about reducing that friction. Like, why would you want friction from people wanting to speak with you? I mean, the only friction that I would say that we do introduce is, and you kind of touched on this a little, James, but I think that very few calendaring apps out there are capable of this is, as an immigration attorney, there are some people that you don't want to talk to. And those are people that are totally ineligible for anything, right? So, or they want a case type that your law firm doesn't actually do. Very few immigration firms that I speak to actually do all types of immigration. But when we're marketing immigration, we often get a lot of these case types, like I don't do the O visa, right? So, what we do is we try to qualify people a little before we let them book that consultation. We do that, of course, in our chatbot where we can ask them a series of questions before we show them the calendar link. And or another way that you can do this with your calendaring is we let people book this 5-minute block on a calendar that we have that's like leads calendar, where they can just basically book a 5-minute block with us anytime we're open. And then one of my staff calls them as soon as we see them book, and then we qualify them. They want to get a spot on the calendar, but we want to make sure they're actually worth an attorney spot. So there's a lot of little creative ways that you can do this based on the size of your firm and what kind of cases you take.
Yeah, I mean, that's an important point. I mean, it's common in law firms in a lot of different practice areas to employ an intake specialist or an intake personnel who can take, and this is something that you should really think about. I mean, you as the immigration attorney, you don't want to be spending your time taking all these calls. I mean, ideally somebody else should speak to them first and find out, what is this person calling about? What type of case do they have? Do we handle this? Does it sound like it's a legitimate case, before they actually get the attorney appointment? So that is, Jared, that's just golden advice. That's so important.
Well, even you said earlier in our conversation, 5-10 minutes on the phone is okay. It is hard, James, when someone calls us as an immigration attorney and they want to just talk for 5 minutes to not just give them that. But if it's a member of your staff that's not an attorney, they literally can't just answer their immigration questions. So it kind of takes that stress of, should we answer a couple questions off? The intake person's there. They can't answer the questions. That just solves the whole dilemma.
Mm-hmm. It does. It's actually a better way to go, frankly. It really is. let's talk about forms. Let's talk about forms. Jared, I'm going to let you do the honors. Tell us, I mean, immigration has probably for a long time, maybe for as long as 100 years, maybe even that long, employed a plethora of forms. We all know that. But it is within the last, I don't know, 20, 25 years that people have started to use software systems to prepare forms. So DocketWise, first of all, DocketWise, we're an integrated forms and case management solution. We have our integrations that we talked about earlier for those who are running a separate case management solution, but DocketWise really does everything. And I just want to, one of the, when we created DocketWise, some of the main things that we wanted to emphasize, or main bases that we wanted to cover were, first of all, we wanted the most powerful forms technology. We wanted to really set the bar for efficiently collecting information from the clients and allow you several different ways of collecting that information and auto-populating it into the form. So we really wanted to try to the extent possible, kind of perfect that. And that's why, we have our smart forms on DocketWise, where you can create a collection of any number of forms, and we produce one seamless web questionnaire that's available in multiple languages. As time went by, we started creating our, multiple language capability, and all of our smart forms currently can be rendered into 8 different languages. And we always take requests. If people want to see additional languages on the platform, we're happy to take those requests. So I think, that's, and making the experience as user-friendly and as pleasant as possible while doing it very, very powerfully and efficiently is really it's made us get to this point where we're, a leader in this area. Jared, you tell me, what's your history with using immigration form software, and what have you seen your colleagues, what have you seen of their experience, their positive and negative experiences with the form software, and how should our listeners, viewers, go about thinking about evaluating form software?
I'm sure that you'll be happy to know, James, that I've only ever had one form software company that I use, which is yours. If you're not using form software, you're really missing the boat here. I would say number one is because, your clients, even just from yours and your clients' time, being able to give them a nice, easy questionnaire that they can fill out from their own home or at work on their time, it's just a big edge for them, because you're taking out one of the sort of themes that I think about all the time is the idea of between synchronous and asynchronous. And so just to understand what that means, right? Phone call is synchronous. James and I have to be on the phone, take the same exact time with each other to make it happen. Email, text, all these other things, they're asynchronous. I don't have to be available when you're available. And anything that what we're learning in, sort of modern work philosophy is that anything that we can make asynchronous, we should, because that adds to our client's convenience and it adds to our convenience. So getting the information from your clients by just sending them a questionnaire is an absolute no-brainer. Having that automatically populate the forms, also no-brainer, especially because, one of the great things about DocketWise, you might need to do 3 forms for your clients, but you only want to get, a lot of these fields are replicated across each form. DocketWise just automatically shoots all that in. And this is all stuff that, just any immigration firm that isn't using form software right now is just missing the boat. It needs to be beautiful on both sides for clients and law firms. And I think, where we're really going in my law firm, and I think across the board, is there's a ton of companies out there that are offering do-it-yourself solutions or really low-price solutions. That's where all of this is going in immigration law. So law firms that have the technology that can let them sort of compete with those internet immigration companies, is really going to be the only way that law firms that are still doing forms are able to even stay in the market. Otherwise, it's going to be all litigation. We'll be the only immigration attorneys left.
That's interesting, Jared. You really see that as a trend. What makes you think that's so? We've talked about. Do you think that that's something that is a widespread trend, or do you think it's limited to a certain section of the immigration client base? Do you think that typical immigration clients are in a position to use those tools, or do you think that that's a more narrow subset? And what makes you think that?
Well, I mean, nobody wants to pay attorneys money, right? Let's start with that premise here.
True.
Attorneys are expensive, right? I mean, my office, $3,500, $4,000 for, a full one-step adjustment of status, right? So if we can have a solution that comes into the market at $500 to $1,000, sitting here at, under 25% of the cost of an attorney, I think that it's just going to be so popular as time goes on and people get more used to using these sort of interfaces that for the easy stuff, you're going to see the low price solutions just eating more and more of the market. There's always going to be people that are going to want to talk to an attorney, but that number is going to get a lot smaller over time.
Interesting. So ideally you want a technology that allows you to compete with those people. This is what Jared's saying. So you make it as quick and as easy, and therefore, you have a product that you can commoditize and, hopefully and compete with those companies to a certain degree. Very interesting. We'll see. I mean, we will see. Certainly change is afoot in the legal industry, legal services industry, to say the least. It has been revolutionized by the whole practice model as well as by the technology, and certainly immigration is by no means going to escape those changes. So let's keep watching that. Maybe we'll come back and talk about that topic in another webinar. Let's talk a little bit about billing, accounting, and payment systems. Jared, go ahead. Tell me what do you think our users should use as some guiding lights for how to think about their billing, accounting, and payment systems?
Yeah, I mean, again, this is meet clients where they're at is my philosophy over and over again. So for payments, like, what do the clients want to do? How do you work with them as much as possible? How do you make your services affordable to them? Almost all my clients are paying me payment plans for their services. Auto pay, the more we've been really pushing hard in our law firm to get everyone on auto pay. The more people you have on auto pay, the more you get paid, the less your staff has to deal with it. I think that that's sort of a no-brainer. I know attorneys, James, that try to charge like extra fees for credit cards or try to push people away from that. That is crazy, because you know what? All of us are consumers as well as attorneys. And when people charge me like an extra fee for using a credit card, I'm like, I'm going to go on to somebody who doesn't do that. It's just eat that fee and move along,
I agree. It's just, I think, frankly, I just think it's silly because you're making it harder for them to pay. Why would you ever do that?
No, yeah. So, I mean, I think this is a constant thing that we're talking about here is how do we reduce friction, right? That's another friction moment. We use, I don't think that, in terms of like real hard business analytics, your P&L, this sort of stuff, you got to use QuickBooks or Xero or one of these others. Like there's not any legal solutions that get anywhere close to the power of these tools. They're cheap. Frankly, as soon as you need to be paying a professional bookkeeper. If you're an attorney, you don't know how to do these things. You don't know how to use these tools. I'm lucky enough, my dad's a small business person. I called him when I had my firm and started like, what is this reconciliation? And he's like, son, you don't need to learn that. You can pay someone $200, $300 a month. They'll do it for you. And so let them get all of that off your plate and onto professionals and have them send you the P&L on a monthly basis. It's just a no-brainer. In terms of, the payments, like, are people paying us at what rate? That's what I use Clio for. And if you've got a lot of people on payment plans, keeping a close eye on what some people call realization rate, meaning, how much work do you do versus how much you get paid for, is a really important thing.
That's right. Your realization rate, for example, let's say that, you value your time. This is an example of a realization rate. You value your time at $300 an hour, and you estimate that a particular case can take you 4 hours. So you develop a flat fee model where you're always going to charge $1,200 for this type of case, and you track your actual time. You should still track your actual time. And it turns out that, after you did the first 5 of these, you look back at your analytics and found out that actually you're spending 7 hours on average on these. something wrong. Your realization rate is bad. You know, you have to reevaluate your flat fee model. That's why even if you're using a flat fee model, you should still track your time. You need to calculate your
I'll do a
realization.
quick share of my screen and show you sort of
Go ahead.
this, you know, so this is Clio, and you know, this is the Clio is so nice. This is why you should pay high quality tools like DocketWise and Clio is. You know, right here, I can see across my entire firm, my realization rate. I can look at it by month. I can see where I'm at. We scroll down, we have collection rate. My collection rate is baller, 92%. We've worked hard on it. You know, you can look again across your monthly and you can see where you were at last year versus this year. These metrics, right? This is how you go from being a person that, you know, you're your own boss, but really you just have a job. You work as an immigration attorney to owning a business in which other people work for you and you're making money and learning how to, you know, make money from that business, just not your right to work on a daily basis.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, this is what you want to do. Let me see here. I had a couple of notes. Let me just go through my notes. Maybe it'll spur a few more comments here. So billing accounting. So you need to think about, do you want your invoicing, your accounting, and your payment systems, do you want them all to be together in one product, or you want them separate? It's fine to have them separate. Hopefully you have integrations where they're talking to each other. Yeah. We mentioned some of the common ones: QuickBooks, Stripe, Xero, okay, all good products. In DocketWise, we have a great integration with LawPay.
I use LawPay.
LawPay is great. It's very versatile. It allows you to take credit card payments. If you send the invoice through DocketWise, there'll be a link there. The client can pay with their card. You could also share it on the client portal. And if you have DocketWise Suite or Enterprise, we have the integration with QuickBooks. That means that when you create an invoice in DocketWise, as soon as you add your first charge to that, it'll create a corresponding invoice in QuickBooks. And then any payments that you log in DocketWise, whether you're logging them as direct payments or whether they're coming by credit card payment through LawPay to DocketWise, they're then going to be pushed to QuickBooks. So that's a very powerful combination. Yeah. I think you want to look for the following in your payment systems. You obviously credit card payment processing, IOLTA trust accounting. You know, you should be able to specify whether the payment that's going to be made is going to go into your business account or your trust account. You want to have the ability to set up payment plans. Ideally, as with LawPay, you can go in and you would enter the client's card information and then set up the terms of the payment plan and have it auto bill them, you know, monthly or whatever the interval is, and send them a receipt every time they're billed. And then you would be able to see all the payments recorded on the invoice. Also, you want integrations with your different practice management software. Yeah, so those are just some basic guiding points. Jared, anything else on any of those?
No, that sounds good.
All right. Let's talk a little bit. We've been talking about integrations, and I don't think we mentioned Zapier yet.
Yeah.
Zapier. Tell me, Jared. What do you think of Zapier?
I love it.
Tell us what it is.
It's provided that your software has Zapier integration. I'm gonna share my screen again, and we're gonna go into this little process map that I've built, provided that I can find it. All right, it's here. We're gonna go back into Clio, and then we're gonna run over to. Okay, so this is a piece of software that I use called Miro. Can you see my Miro board right here? Mm-hmm. Okay, so the basic thing with any process mapping or whatever is, first step, we're not talking about tech, and you don't even need Miro. You can also have this thing that I've got right here behind me. You can do it with old school. You can do it with pen and paper. Any integration, any process map that you want to create, what you need to first start with is what is actually happening. What is step one? What is step two? What is step three? That's how we get to something like Zapier. So, what you might want to do, for instance, is every time someone misses a payment in LawPay, you may want that to send you a message in Slack. This is where Zapier is so cool, is that you can set up, and we're going to just zoom in here. What I'm using this for right here, this is my Jaskot.Law workflow. So somebody comes in and clicks on a Facebook ad. They get added as a new contact in my state in Airtable. We try to figure out, are they a new case or an existing case based on where they're at. Consult scheduled, yes or no. Then we add them into a follow-up sequence, add them to this consults tab. We have the consult. Do we offer them services or not? Every little decision in that client's path through our law firm, I have mapped here. Now, if a lot of these steps look manual at first, like this one, add to contacts in Airtable. So if a customer calls, you have someone type that into that, database. But you might actually not want to have to manually add that, or the thing like an AI like I have is actually doing that. So you just want it to load in. Each little step here between them could be you actually going and doing it. And that's very helpful to people and for your staff to actually know what they're supposed to do. But when you then have everything mapped out like this, you can also start to look at this link and these actions. You can say, you know what, I'm not going to do this anymore. The integration is going to do it. Or if there's no integration or you want to do something exciting, you can use something like Zapier or Integromat. And what they do is you can just put into them, if a new contact is added in Clio, send me a Slack message, add them to this spreadsheet. Any if then that you can think of, you can then use Zapier to glue those things together with your own logic.
And where do you put the if-then statements? Is that in Zapier or in Integro?
Zapier. I would use it in Zapier, yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So a good like if-then point where we're seeing here is someone contacts my law firm, right? And so we then are going to try to determine if they're going to schedule a consult or not. Maybe they don't want to give us the $100 over the phone. Maybe they're not ready to book a prepaid consult. So we have this yes, no here. Mm-hmm. If it's yes, we add them to the consults tab, and then we actually add them also to the calendar. If it's no, we decide, do we want to dump them into a follow-up sequence? Maybe we don't because they were a real jerk on the phone and we just don't want them to be a customer at all. But maybe we want to send them emails. So then we add them to our email list. Maybe we want to send them text messages following up. Maybe we want to invite them to follow us on Facebook. Each of those decisions can then be mapped, and then you can try to add a Zap or an integration to actually perform that without a human doing anything. Adding these automations is just so much easier for us as people to not have to remember to do this. And it saves time and it increases that fact that we actually follow the rules.
This is incredible. I mean, this is great stuff, Jared. Do you know of colleagues who are doing the same thing as you're doing, or do you think you're really a pioneer in structuring things this way? I mean, to the extent where you've developed the workflows.
Yeah, I mean, I think that there's certainly there's some firms out there that are thinking about this. Mm-hmm. Some of the more maybe business immigration law firms that are getting contracts for, doing thousands of applications for corporations are more into it. I think I'm really been influenced in my career by the lean manufacturing movement that they brought into factories to really bring up the speed. And, I mean, though we're not making physical objects, we're engaging in manufacturing as attorneys, and there's no reason that we can't use these same principles to make our law firms more efficient.
I totally agree. I mean, I think it's definitely high time that law in general, but especially immigration law, which it employs some of the techniques from other industries, some of the techniques that are used in sales, some of the techniques that are used in logistics and manufacturing. We've got a job to do as an immigration lawyer. Sometimes parts of it, if it's not structured properly, will be very cumbersome. We need to employ these. So it's really good what you said. I mean, yeah, I think that the larger firms where they are just compelled by virtue of the fact that the volume of work that they're handling, they are compelled to think logistically. But to have the tools nowadays where, these tools, you can subscribe to them like Zapier. This is something that anybody can create an account on. And you can then, utilize technology that's as powerful as that which has previously been available only to big companies or big institutions handling a tremendous volume of work. You can now have it down to your own, your own solo practice, your own small firm, whatever the size of your firm is. you have those tools in your hand. That is incredible, and that's really where it's all going.
Yeah, I mean, even if you're happy with how much money you're making, you can work less, right? I mean, the more that you can tie together about this, you just don't have to work as much, or you can make more, or your customers are more satisfied because you're doing a better job for them. It's just this continuous improvement is really available. And the resources that teach us how to do Zapier, they're really widely available. I mean, you can just get on YouTube and start, zapping it up. And don't get discouraged, like if it doesn't work for you from the start. I just want to tell people, like, a lot of the zaps that I wire up still don't work for me on the first start. Like, just so people know, those that don't know computer programmers, like, their stuff don't work on the first time either. They go to compile it and it breaks. Like, think of it more as a challenge and less of like, oh, I can't do this, I'm walking away. Because you learn by failing.
Absolutely. You mentioned continuous improvement. I mean, between talking as you did about taking techniques from manufacturing and talking about continuous improvement, it made the word Kaizen pop into my head. I don't know if you know the word Kaizen.
I love it. I love it.
You should know. It's a Japanese word, and it means continuous improvement. It means strive for perfection, attempt to continuously improve, constantly critique, constantly seek perfection. That is what they do that's what they did in Japanese industry. That's how they achieve their economic miracle. That's part of how they do business. So you should try to emulate that. And
we try to cultivate that, James, in our law firm too, internally, is like, if someone makes a mistake or if something goes wrong, like, take away the blame, calm down a little on the shame, and just like, let's try to figure out. It's very rarely that the problem is the people in your firm. It's almost often that the problem is either training or the structure itself. And so when you begin to look at the mistakes that happen in your law firm, and even a mistake could even be that you took a case for $5,000 that you should have charged $10,000 for because it took so damn long. Like, looking at areas and trying to see where the problems lie, and then continuously improving, it just changes your attitude and the attitude of the people in your office to one of teamwork instead of one of finger pointing, which is just toxic.
Exactly. Finger pointing and that kind of stuff is just, it's so unproductive. It's toxic. It's so unproductive. And the only mistakes that are bad are the ones that you don't learn from, the ones that you continuously repeat. So that's basically what you're saying. Yeah, absolutely, Jared. Such good philosophical insights here. Let's talk about templates. We want to template. We kind of mentioned that we want to template client communications. I mean, you want to template things when they're repeated over and over, because that's where you're going to pick up your efficiencies. And some obvious examples from immigration are, you're going to have cover letters for each type of case. Those should be templated, right? You should not have to start fresh drafting a new H-1B cover letter every time you do that type of case. Those should be templated. Routine correspondence, file opening letters, status letters, file closing letters. Those are routine correspondence. Template them, auto-populate them. The attorney-client agreement, right? Ideally, you should have a template where you can copy and paste in the description of services and the case type and the fee section, to specify what you're doing in the particular case. That should be templated. Motions, if you're doing immigration court work, motions, pleadings. If you're doing federal court work, petitions for review, all of those things can be templated. Now, where do you get templates? Jared, where can they get templates? First of all, any thoughts about templates? What do you think about templates, and where can people find templates?
Yeah, I mean, the beautiful thing I think about templates is, like, if you do it right once, you don't have to do it again. Sometimes I think as we kind of get bored as attorneys, like, we're like, oh, we've already had that conversation a million times. Like, we got to keep in our minds over and over again, this is the first time they've ever hired an immigration attorney. This is the first time they've ever sent out their I-130. This is the first time they've ever gotten an RFE. And so doing just a really excellent job at each of those stages for your clients is what's going to make them happy. And guess what? Even if you're doing the same exact thing 90 times in a row, it's the first time for them. They don't know that you use the same trick on every other client. And think about other places where this happens for you. There's restaurants that you go into, they have an extremely high level of service because they're doing the exact same thing really well over and over and over again. That's exactly what we're doing in our law firms. And like you said, James, it can go from opening letter and retainer, but it can also go to areas, especially if you're a flat fee attorney, where you're charging people a lot of money. I mean, at this point, in a lot of our asylum briefs, guess what? Like, it's the person that fled because they were in a gang-controlled neighborhood in El Salvador over and over again. Like, you don't have to rewrite the wheel. You've already done the hard work and the legal research. You can really smash these things together. Like, these are the ways that you can get more efficient in your law firm, and using templates is a great way to do it. And also, with templates, you can take a person that's high skilled and you can bring that down to a lower skilled employee because they're not making as many critical decisions. So you can really also kind of bring up your bottom line.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. And some ways that you can get templates. I mean, I've always suggested, you may want to make friends with people in the different Facebook groups, in the immigration, lawyer Facebook groups, and, ask for templates. Obviously, I think you should, get acquainted first and have some basis. You don't want to just, go in there and just ask people for all their templates, right? You're asking them for something valuable. So have something to give them return and be nice about it. If you work for a firm, you may have templates that you used to use in your old firm or remember what they were like. And, that's how a lot of people acquired their templates. They went to work somewhere else and then they just adopted those templates when they went on their own. Jared, any other ways people can find templates? Can you think of any?
That's a good, I think that the ways that you listed are really good. And like you said, like for the people that are on LinkedIn, like it's a really sort of common thing where somebody friends you and then they immediately start soliciting you. Like, I think the key with doing it on Facebook or any of the social media is just to cultivate a spirit of generosity and not greed, and people will be a lot more willing to help you.
Absolutely. It's about cooperation. And immigration law in general, I think, is an area where one thing that I always loved about it is people are willing to share information. In general, they are very receptive when you want to ask a well-intentioned question. If you haven't seen the situation before, ask the question. Somebody out there has seen that before, and most of the time they'll be more than happy to help. It's one thing I always loved about the field. Let's talk about, I want to hit telephone systems, though. Jared, how do you do telephone communication in your office?
Vonage, voice over internet protocol. Voice over IP, like, it's just, frankly, like, you have to do this in your law firm. Why? It gives you the ability, if we have COVID again, to quickly distribute your entire team and have each and every one of them with their phone numbers. Gives you the ability to work from wherever you want in the world. Gives you the ability to hire people in other jurisdictions and other countries. Gives you the ability to monitor the calls and add AI and CRMs in a much more sophisticated way. You have to get voice over IP. Again, this is not a place to be a cheapskate. Get one of the leaders in the field like Vonage. You don't want to have low quality stuff or service. Like, open your wallet, pay for it, and move along.
Yeah, I mean, some of the things that you're going to find in there, I used to use Vonage years ago, and some of the things you're going to find in there, they, even way back in the day, they had the ability for you to forward, your calls to different numbers. You could have had multiple, numbers to forward it to. They have an interface where you can track all the inbound calls. I mean, what are some of the? I mean, do they have integrations now? Does Vonage integrate?
I mean, Vonage has an integration with Clio. It's so awesome. Like, I can call clients from within their matter and it's automatically timing it. You could add transcription. It's automatically transcribing and taking notes of the call while you're on the line with your client. That's just absolutely spectacular. Their phone app is really good. So like, my staff they can call me and say, hey, Jared, I've got somebody on the line. I'm in Texas right now. I can pick up that call. They don't know that I'm not upstairs in my office.
Mm-hmm. And they'll index. I think you mentioned before, they'll index the call right under the matter.
Amazing.
Yeah, it's a good product. So you want to be using VoIP. That's for sure. All right, let's talk about email systems. Well, there's no shortage of these email systems. And I mean, you want to be able to see, first of all, what are some of the hallmarks of a good email system? Some things I can think of. You want to be able to see if a customer opened the email. You want to make sure you get a bounce back if it didn't go through. You know, you may want the email system to have various integrations. Those are that's a short list. Jared, what are you using for email?
We have Gmail for our office, the G Suite of business.
Okay.
You know, it makes it so easy for me to turn on and off new employees. Google obviously is super user friendly, that interface. Most people have experience with Gmail. It looks the same for my law firm. You can use your own URL. So that's what I use for my firm. I pay for an additional app on top of Gmail called Superhuman. It's this thing that allows you to do all your emailing with only keyboard shortcuts, super speed. That allows me to really be doing a great job, being responsive, following up, etc.
Fantastic. Yeah, and then you may want to combine that with some other email tools. I mentioned MailChimp. There are other tools where you'll be able to mount email campaigns, mass emailing. There's several different apps. I like MailChimp the best of all of them, but there's others as well that do the same thing that are great. You're not going to get away without having office equipment, even with all this. I mean, actual, like old-fashioned office equipment. Even with all this, technology, you're still in immigration law at least going to need a copier, scanner, or all-in-one, something like that. And I guess the only thing I wanted to tell people a couple points about what to look for. One of the main capabilities is you want to have really good scanning capabilities on it and be able to put in as much of a stack of paper, hopefully a giant stack of paper, and have it quickly scan all of that right to your email. That would be, if you're going to do anything, that would be the number one feature that I'd look for in a scanner and all-in-one. Leasing generally is going to be much more cost effective than buying. Those things are very expensive. There's large pieces of office equipment, quite pricey. You're probably going to want to lease it. That way you can get an upgrade a couple of years later. Any thoughts on that kind of technology, Jared?
Yeah, just again, this is another place where being a cheapskate comes out to be a real pain in the ass in the long run. Like, get something that's going to work, get something that you can get serviced. If you're getting like an all-in-one. My law firm, we were using Brother for a long time. We finally now got the big old behemoth, which is nice. It works really well. It's really fast, does all the things that James describes. But I mean, the other thing is, like, I've seen on some of these message boards, James, people are going all round and round about trying to save $50. Like, leave that alone. Get a good one and move along. Like, you don't need to. It doesn't need to be a place where you save money. It needs to be a place where you don't have to think about it very often.
That's true. There's no substitute for having the quality tools. Get the right tools and do the job well. This is how you're going to be profitable.
Yeah, exactly.
And I always wonder, how paperless can you be? I mean, it's getting easier. It's certainly much, much, much easier to do things at least partially paperlessly in immigration than it used to be.
Yeah.
But I don't know that you can. I mean, some people I think are almost totally paperless. I think if you're doing removal work, you're obviously still need to carry a paper file into court most of the time, and you may have to serve paper copies on the court and opposing counsel. I think that in general, my thoughts are that at this point in time, for most types of cases, with the exception of the removal, you could probably just get away with maintaining a skeletal paper file and have everything else scanned. But you have to be diligent, like practically religious about scanning in every single piece of paper and making sure that it gets to the file where it belongs. Jared, what do you think about paperlessness? How paperless is your office?
Zero. I mean, yeah,
Okay.
Well, yeah, I mean, most of our cases are in court. We have a lot of court cases, so we have a heavy backup. Yeah. But I mean, it's a good goal. It's just not one that we're currently executing.
Jared, are you using video conferencing with the clients for consultations?
Yeah, definitely.
Okay. Is that Zoom or?
We use this thing called Whereby, actually.
Okay.
I mean, I have Zoom as well. We use Google Meets as well, but we also use this one called Whereby. Big advantage there is the customer doesn't have to pull an app down. They can do the whole video conference in browser. So for a lot of my clients that aren't in the business world, they aren't doing Zoom all the time like all of us are. Having something where they don't have to download anything just makes it easier.
Absolutely. All right. Well, we're at a little bit over the hour, but I think we've covered a lot of valuable ground here. But I do want to just end on a specific point, which is where to go to learn more, because I want people to know where to go to raise their own tech IQ. Jared, tell me how can people find out more? How can they raise their tech IQ?
Podcasts are amazing. I mean, there's so much information out there about building your business in podcasts, be they business books. The Lean Startup is a really good book. I read a lot of articles on Medium. I've read a lot of business books. That's how I know about the manufacturing stuff. It's just like a lot of these principles can be easily adapted to the law. They don't have to be law specific. You don't really have to use law specific tools for many of these things or learning sources. So just, learn like YouTube. It depends on the person's learning style, reading, watching videos. Connect with me on LinkedIn. I post about this stuff a lot. I love connections on LinkedIn. I'm happy if someone wants to DM me on LinkedIn to take them wherever they want to go. Also, smile, James. I'm taking a little picture of our webinar here.
Okay, awesome.
There we go. I really appreciate it. Thanks for inviting me. I really love DocketWise, and this was an awesome interview. Thanks.
Jared, it's a pleasure. We're going to have you back again. I mean, you're great to talk to, and I've really enjoyed it. I hope our listeners have gotten a lot out of it. Thanks to you, and everyone. Have a great week. Stay safe, and we will see you next time. Take care.